Hey, Ruby, and anyone else who might be joining. Sorry I haven't done these as much as I'd like to, but yeah, here we are. So where we last left off was with Mr. Jerusalem, the older man, who was kind of hesitant about the whole idea, didn't think it'd work, and wasn't sure how he felt. But then he tried and he found he was quite a good shot, and now he's just was going around and hit like 4 trucks. And anyway, so chapter 13 is where we're at. Also, sorry about the lighting. It's nighttime, but I haven't been able to have time during the day. So here we go. Chapter 13. Maxie Hammerman's battle plan and General Anna's Hester Street strategy. Now, although Mr. Jerusalem was no more than half a mile from Maxie Hammerman's shop when he ran out of ammunition, it took him nearly 3 hours to get there, because by mid-afternoon, the city was a mess. In the Delancey Street area, things were particularly bad. In every block, Mr. Jerusalem saw 2 or 3 trucks just stranded. Traffic was at a standstill. People were shouting at the truck drivers for blocking the streets. The truck drivers were furious because they were not used to being honked at and shouted at. They had no idea what was going on. Maybe this picture. Just a mess. They shot out all the tires and the city is at a standstill. The first few truckers who were hit thought that they had had bad luck to pick up. Sweetheart, you can't scratch on the chair. It's kind of noisy. You can come up here. Sorry. Yes. Okay, for real. We're going to continue the story now. The first few trucks who were hit thought that they had had some bad luck to pick up a splinter of glass or a nail. They telephoned for garage mechanics to come and help change their flats, and went to have some coffee while they waited for the mechanics to arrive. The truck drivers did not realize that their troubles were anything out of the ordinary until the mechanics began to sound irritated with them. Around noon, the mechanics began to snap at the truck drivers who were calling for emergency rush service. Just hold your horses, buddy, more than one driver was told by a mechanic. I got 14 flats ahead of you. You'll just have to wait until tomorrow. At that point, the truck drivers began to wander. Most of the stalled trucks were so big that a truck driver by himself could not possibly change a tire on his own. So a driver had little choice but to sit with his truck and just wait, getting angrier and angrier and crosser as the day wore on. Now, Mr. Jerusalem was impressed that the afternoon papers were already warning motorists that Delancey Street was a disaster area and that there were terrible tie-ups in all other parts of the city. It was 5:30 before Mr. Jerusalem could get his cart through this tangled traffic and to Maxie Hammerman's shop. In many streets, push carts were the only vehicles that were getting around at all. Now, by the time Mr. Jerusalem did get to Maxie's, Maxie had an enormous street map of New York City tacked up on the wall. Coming up with a more battle plan and strategy. As the peddlers came in to report, Maxie had been sticking P-pins in the streets where the truck tires had been hit. These P-pins had been painted a bright red so that one could see at a glance just how the battle was going. There were a few gold P-pins scattered along with the red. Maxie explained that these were the really big hits, such as trailer trucks or mighty mammoths or 10-ton tigers or leaping llamas? Asked Mr. Jerusalem. If you got a llama, yeah, I'll give you a gold, said Maxie. The map was already peppered with red and gold pea pins. Mr. Jerusalem studied the map with great pleasure. The map, it looked very neat and well organized. Oh, sorry. The battle looked very neat and well organized on Maxie's map. On the streets, said Mr. Jerusalem, it does not look so neat. Oh, that I know, said Maxie Hammerman, as he stuck 5 more pea pins on the map, 4 red and 1 gold. Although Maxie had not left his shop all day, he had the clearest picture of the battle because all the peddlers had been coming in to report to him. If there is, by chance, a street where the trucks have been getting through, said Maxie, I can see it on the map, so that whenever someone comes back to the shop for more ammunition, I can advise them where they're needed most. Now, so far, Harry the Hot Dog has the record, Maxie told Mr. Jerusalem. He has downed 23 tires, and he has come in for ammunition twice. Oh, how wonderful to be so young, said Mr. Jerusalem. We should give him a medal. Oh, we will, said Maxie Hammerman. The only thing that's worrying me, he added, is General Anna. Oh, has she been caught? asked Mr. Jerusalem. No, she has not been caught, Maxie said, though I do not know why. She cannot aim at all. It's hard for a lady, said Mr. Jerusalem. She comes to me in tears at 12 o'clock noon, Maxie said, to tell me that she has shot 25 pea pins and has not hit 1 tire. Hitting is not as important, said Mr. Jerusalem. It is the spirit. I tried to tell her, said Maxie Hammerman, but General Anna says they call me General Anna. Should they call me General Anna for nothing? Oh, it does not matter, said Mr. Jerusalem. Oh, said Maxie, to General Anna, it does matter. So you know what she's doing now? What? Said Mr. Jerusalem. She has gone sticking in the pea pins by hand. She gave up on the shooter and she's just going around sticking pins in the tire. By hand? Said Mr. Jerusalem. But anyone could see her doing it. I told her, said Maxie Hammerman. I told her, in broad daylight, and you're creeping up to a truck that is parked. In broad daylight, I told her. And you're creeping up to a truck that is parked to deliver pajama trimmings on Hester Street? Are you crazy? I tell her, Maxie explained, that it is much too much danger. Do you know what she says? What? Said Mr. Jerusalem. She says, don't worry. Who would suspect an old lady of putting pea pins in a tire? If anyone asks me why I'm bending over in the street, I tell them I'm looking for a hat pin that I have dropped under the truck. Mr. Jerusalem groaned. We shouldn't let her do it. She has even had policemen bending over on their knees, helping her look for a hat pin, laughed Maxie Hammerman. Still, we must stop her, said Mr. Jerusalem. But she has killed 14 truck tires, said Maxie Hammerman, since 12 o'clock noon. All by hand? Asked Mr. Jerusalem. Chapter 14. Some theories as to the cause of the flat tires. The rotten rubber theory, the scattered pea-tack theory, the enemy from outer space theory. Look at all those tires they've killed. As the pushcart peddlers had hoped, the truck drivers had no idea what had hit them. There were clearly too many casualties on those first days of the pea shooter campaign to be accounted to just bad luck. But The truckers did not know who to blame. Now, Big Mo at first, he blamed the tire company that he traded with. He accused the firm of putting rotten rubber on their tires. Big Mo's suggestion so offended the president of the tire company that he now refused to sell Big Mo any more tires. Well, this turned out to be quite inconvenient. Big Mo was suddenly very much in need of tires, and other tire companies were so busy filling orders for their regular customers that nobody would spare any tires for Big Mo. It was curious, but for 3 days, no one who changed a truck tire even found a P-pin that had done the damage. Either the P-pins had worked themselves down between the deep grooves of the tire, or the P had been broken off by the weight of the tire. It sometimes took 5 or 10 minutes for the air to escape from the punctured tire. So often, drivers whose trucks were hit while moving did not even discover the damage until they had moved for half a mile down the road from where they'd been hit. Now, even those few mechanics who had found pins in tires did not think it odd, not any odder than at first than if nails or screws or bits of glass that they were always removing from tires. But finally, one sharp-eyed mechanic found a whole undamaged P-pin. He extracted 2 more in the same day and began to get suspicious. Now, once the mechanics knew what to look for, they pulled out quite a few P-pins from truck tires. Now, no one knew what the P-pins were, of course, or that it had been on purpose, because no one had ever seen one before. The newspapers printed an enlarged drawing of one that they called a P-tack. It was supposed at first that a lot of P-tacks must have somehow been scattered through the city streets, possibly by a trucker carelessly hauling a load of P-tacks. The police checked the P in the classified section of the telephone directory, but they couldn't find anyone in the P-tack business. Oh, sorry, cat just jumped up. They looked in the telephone directory but could find no one in the P-tack business. Now, had the police looked under P's dried, they would have found Posey P Company, by the ounce, by the pound, by the ton, as they say. And Mr. Posey might have told them that a lady named Wenda Gambling had ordered 1 ton of peas only 10 days before. And the police might have looked into that. But of course, they didn't. As it was, the police did not think of questioning Mr. Posey, and Mr. Posey did not think of telling the police about Wenda Gambling's order, because he did not make any connection between the peas and the P-tacks that the newspapers were talking about, as the peas he sold had no tax in them. On orders from Mayor Emmett P. Cudd, Big Trucks Mean Progress, the police commissioner sent out several patrols to sweep the streets, hoping to clean up the streets from any P-tacks that were lying there. And the patrols did find a few P-pins that had missed their mark, but not enough to make it worthwhile. At the height of the mystery, a truck driver named Mac, the same Mac who had run down Morris the florist, developed a theory that the P-tacks were actually coming from, and this is what was in the newspaper, a picture of a P with a tack going through. Mac had developed a theory that the P-tacks were coming from outer space. An invisible energy, Mac. An invisible enemy, Mac suggested, was circling the Earth and spitefully bombarding it with P-tacks. The fact that no one had ever seen a P-tack before and that no P-tax were listed in New York's phone book gave others some consideration of the outer space theory. Mac's theory resulted in a number of truckers driving around the city with their heads out the window of the cabs. There was a rash of head-on collisions from trucks whose drivers were looking up at the sky for P-tax. They're driving around looking up at outer space and they crashing into one another. The outer space theory was the most frightening theory so far proposed, because it suggested the additional possibility that the P-tax coming from aliens might be radioactive. There were tests, and of course, run on the P-tax that the mechanics had collected, and none showed any radioactivity. So this calmed the general public, but the truck drivers remained uneasy. Mac pointed out that the tests had been run on only a few P-tax, and that there was no proof at all that the other P-tax might be radioactive. Or, as a fellow truck driving friend of Mac's had suggested, maybe the radioactivity had not passed from the P-tax into the tires. At this point, the morale of the truck drivers was very low, and many talked about quitting or going into some other line of work. The truck companies did everything they could to reassure the drivers that this was temporary and would pass. Several of the companies hired P-tax spotters to ride on the hoods of the trucks looking for tax before they drive them over. The spotters were supposed to scan the skies and signal to the drivers if they saw any P-tax coming from outer space. Although the spotters signaled the drivers at frequent intervals, the signals proved to all be false alarms over a stray butterfly or a scrap of paper that someone had dropped out of an office window. No one ever produced a P-tax that had come from outer space. Now, finally, it occurred to a newspaper reporter to ask Mac how he explained the fact that it was only the truck tires that were getting hit. Now, this was the first bit of intelligent thinking. Sorry, this is my place, tired. And it might have led to something had not a lady called the newspaper to say that it wasn't true that only truck tires were getting hit. She said that she had been painfully pricked by a P-tack as she was crossing 2nd Avenue. Who missed? Demanded Maxie Hammerman when the newspapers reported this interesting development. I didn't miss, said Harry the hot dog. She insulted my sauerkraut, and for once I couldn't resist. So she insulted his sauerkraut, and he decided he was going to hit her with a P-tack. For once we understand, said General Anna, but it shouldn't happen twice. General Anna had to be firm with Harry the hot dog, as he was such a good shot that his friends were now calling him Harry the hot shot, which he didn't mind at all. In fact, he was so pleased with himself that he would not have hesitated to shoot at the mayor himself if anyone had dared him to. I'm warning you, Harry the hot dog, said General Anna. We are not shooting innocent people, even if they are jerks. That will only cause trouble and distract. Now, what most infuriated the truck drivers was that no one seemed to feel sorry for them. People would call out at a stalled driver, "What's the matter, mister? A little trouble?" taunting them. But they would smile as they asked the question, and no one ever offered to help a driver change a tire. The truth was that it seemed to amuse people to see an enormous truck made helpless by a mere flat tire. Newspaper cartoonists kept drawing humorous pictures of the handicapped trucks, and one television comedian made himself famous overnight by imitating a truck in trouble. Of course, there was great inconvenience in the city, with trucks stalled everywhere, but the trucks had been inconveniencing the city for a long time, even before they had flat tires. The fact that the trucks themselves were the fact that the trucks themselves were now the ones most inconvenienced by this new development actually seemed to cheer people up. They didn't complain much at all. When the breakdowns began, the truck drivers had simply left their trucks in the middle of the street until they could get mechanics to help change the tires. But by the fourth day of the pea shooter campaign, there were now so many trucks disabled that the traffic commissioner issued an emergency order requiring that all vehicles with flat tires must be removed from the streets within 1 hour of time that the flat was reported. The penalty for leaving a truck stranded in the middle of the street was $500. And as there were not enough tow trucks in the city to get all of the stalled vehicles off the street, the truckers whose tires had not been hit had to stop. Even the truck drivers whose tires had not been hit had to stop their regular delivery work just in order to tow their friends to garages. So now even the people who weren't getting hit couldn't make their deliveries. From time to time, one saw tow trucks with flat tires being towed by regular trucks. When a truck carrying perishable goods, like fruits or vegetables, had broken down, the driver often had to hire half a dozen push carts. So now the truck drivers need the push carts. Had to hire half a dozen push carts to unload the truck and deliver the goods before they'd get spoiled. This is very good business for push carts, said Eddie Maroney. With the extra work, we can buy more pins. By the 6th day of the pea shooter campaign, the number of trucks in the streets was reduced enough so that the traffic finally flowed at a brisk pace for the first time in 10 years. Now, there were occasional tie-ups caused by the push cart peddlers shooting down more trucks, but the trucks were removed so fast now because of the fee that traffic finally could flow. Okay, sorry about stumbling over my words a lot this time. I am extremely tired, but hope you're enjoying it, and I will do another one soon.